History teaches us that laws don't always protect people. Sometimes they exist to break them. And every punishment in this video was once completely legal. Stay until the end because the final punishment was so extreme that witnesses documented people begging to die before it was finished. Scaphism. In ancient Persia, there was a punishment reserved for crimes considered unforgivable. The condemned person was trapped between two hollowed boats. They were force-fed milk and honey, not as mercy but as preparation. Left floating on stagnant water, insects were drawn to the body. What followed wasn't a quick death. Victims remained alive for days, sometimes longer, slowly consumed by infection and exposure. This was not execution. It was deliberate, prolonged suffering, legalized by the state. The breaking wheel. In medieval Europe, criminals could be sentenced to be tied to a large wooden wheel. Their limbs were methodically shattered using heavy tools, not to kill immediately, but to disable movement. The body was then woven into the wheel and displayed publicly. Some died within hours, others survived for days. The law called this justice. Lingqi, death by 1,000 cuts. For over 1,000 years in imperial China, certain crimes earned a punishment called lingqi. This punishment was reserved for crimes considered unforgivable, such as treason, murder of parents, or acts seen as a threat to social order. The condemned person was sentenced publicly, often in front of a crowd. Their fate was meant to be seen, remembered, and feared. What made lingqi especially disturbing was how it reflected the legal mindset of the time. The condemned person would be strapped to a pole or a tree. The sentence was carried out in a controlled and prolonged manner to prevent early or quick death. Lingqi was finally abolished in the early 20th century as China began reforming its legal system under modern pressure and changing values. The brazen bull. Imagine a punishment designed not just to kill, but to turn human suffering into entertainment. This was the brazen bull. In ancient Greece, a hollow bull made of bronze or brass was built to execute those accused of serious crimes. From the outside, it looked like a statue. Inside, it was a sealed metal chamber. The condemned person was locked inside the bull through a small door. Once sealed, a fire was lit beneath it. As the flames grew stronger, the metal slowly heated. The person inside had nowhere to move, nowhere to escape. The bull was designed with pipes and chambers in its head. The internal pipe system distorted those screams so that, from the outside, they sounded like the roaring of a bull. This punishment is most closely associated with Phalaris, the tyrant of Sicily. And according to ancient accounts, the inventor of the device was the first person forced inside it when the ruler decided to test how well it worked. Impalement. Across parts of Eastern Europe and the Ottoman Empire, impalement was a legal punishment. It involved fixing the condemned person onto a long wooden or metal stake, which was then raised upright. Unlike many executions, the goal was not immediate death. The stake was often positioned carefully to avoid vital organs, allowing the body to remain alive for as long as possible. Executioners were sometimes trained specifically to do this correctly. Victims were often displayed publicly, at city gates, along roads, or outside fortifications. One of the most infamous figures associated with impalement was Vlad III of Wallachia, better known as Vlad the Impaler. Historical accounts describe entire landscapes filled with stakes. In the Ottoman Empire, medieval Europe, and parts of Asia, impalement was reserved for crimes seen as unforgivable: treason, rebellion, or defiance of authority. Hanging, drawing, and quartering was one of the most severe punishments in medieval England. It was reserved almost exclusively for high treason. This punishment was not a single act. It was a sequence designed to strip a person of dignity, identity, and memory. First came the drawing. The condemned was tied to a wooden frame or hurdle and pulled through the streets by a horse. This public procession was intentional. Next came the hanging. But unlike modern executions, the goal was not always immediate death. The person was suspended only long enough to render them weak or unconscious, but not necessarily to end their life. Then came the quartering. The body was divided into parts after death, and each part was displayed in different locations: city gates, bridges, or public squares. The law believed that destroying the body destroyed the traitor's legacy. No grave, no honor, no memory except fear. For centuries, this punishment remained legal because it was seen as necessary for maintaining order. Today, Hanging, drawing, and quartering stands as one of the clearest examples of how law once used terror as a tool of control. Starvation cells. The starvation cell was one of the most psychologically brutal punishments ever created. It didn't rely on pain in the traditional sense. It relied on time, isolation, and the slow breakdown of the human body and mind. These cells existed in different forms across medieval Europe and parts of Asia. They were usually small stone chambers, often underground, with no windows, no light, and barely enough space to sit or lie down. The person inside was not always sentenced to immediate death. Instead, they were sentenced to disappear. Food was reduced to almost nothing. Sometimes a piece of bread every few days, sometimes only water, sometimes neither. Guards would still visit, not to help, but to observe. As days passed, the body weakened, but the mind suffered even faster. With no light, no sound, and no sense of time, people lost track of reality. Some believed hours had passed when it had been days. Others believed days had passed when it had only been hours. The cell became a place where memory collapsed. The worst part wasn't hunger, it was the waiting. Unlike public executions, starvation cells offered no spectacle. In many cases, the person inside was not even told how long the sentence would last. This made the punishment uniquely terrifying. Poena culae. Poena culae was an ancient Roman punishment reserved for one of the most unforgivable crimes: parricide, killing one's own parent. The condemned person was sewn into a large leather sack along with live animals, traditionally a dog, a rooster, a monkey, and a snake, and thrown into deep water. Romans believed the criminal had broken the natural order of family and society. So, the punishment removed them from the human community entirely. What makes these punishments unsettling isn't just how cruel they were, it's that they were once considered normal. Which one disturbed you the most? And what do you think it says about the people who lived through that time? Let me know in the comments. If you want more history told without filters, like the video and subscribe, because the world we know today took a long time to get here.